Princess Zara belonged to a world where love was considered a disease. Not the romantic kind you see in movies, but an actual diagnosis that her people had cured thousands of years ago. The Luminari, her civilization, had evolved beyond feelings. They believed emotions clouded judgment and wasted time that could be spent understanding the universe. Zara was 247 years old, though she looked about 30 in human terms. She had spent her entire life studying numbers, stars, and the fabric of reality itself. While other species were busy falling in and out of relationships, she was mapping dimensions that most beings couldn't even imagine existed. She was proud of this. In her world, being called emotional was the worst insult possible. Her life was perfect, ordered, and predictable. Until the day the council summoned her to their crystal chamber and gave her an assignment she absolutely didn't want. "Earth?" she had asked, trying to keep the disgust from her voice. "You want me to go to Earth?" The High Elder, an ancient being who had lived for over 10,000 years, nodded slowly. "We need data on emotional species. You will observe them, document their behavior, and return with a comprehensive study. 3 Earth years should be sufficient." 3 years felt like a prison sentence. Earth was barely civilized by galactic standards. These humans had only just figured out how to leave their own planet, and even then, not very well. They spent half their time fighting over resources and the other half obsessing over something they called love. They wrote songs about it, made movies about it, and ruined perfectly good friendships over it. But orders were orders. Zara packed her research equipment, programmed her holographic disguise, and took a ship to the third planet from a small yellow star in an unremarkable corner of the Milky Way. She landed in Switzerland and took a position at a place called CERN, where humans studied particles and pretended they understood physics. Her disguise made her look human enough, tall and elegant with violet eyes that she explained as contact lenses whenever anyone asked. The humans believed her easily. They saw what they expected to see. The first few months were exactly as boring as she'd predicted. She watched humans interact with a detached curiosity, the same way a biologist might watch ants. They were fascinating in their inefficiency. They made decisions based on feelings rather than facts. They chose partners based on arbitrary criteria like humor and kindness, rather than genetic compatibility. It was absurd. She kept detailed notes on everything. How they smiled at each other for no logical reason. How they brought each other coffee as a bonding ritual. How they stayed late at work not because they had to, but because someone they liked was also staying late. It was all very primitive and somewhat sad. Then she met Daniel. Dr. Daniel Zhang was everything wrong with humanity compressed into one person. He was a physicist at CERN, reasonably intelligent by Earth standards but hopelessly naive by hers. He wore socks that didn't match, forgot to eat lunch when he was working on equations, and had this annoying habit of talking to machines like they could hear him. He once apologized to a computer for shutting it down too quickly. Zara found him utterly ridiculous. Their first real conversation happened late one night when she was alone in the observation room, analyzing data streams. She preferred working when the facility was empty, when she didn't have to pretend to be slower and less capable than she actually was. The door opened. Daniel walked in carrying 2 cups of terrible coffee from the vending machine. "Thought you might want some company," he said, offering her a cup. "I don't," Zara replied without looking up from her screen. He sat down anyway, a few chairs away, respecting her space but not leaving. "You know, you remind me of the particle accelerator." That got her attention. "Excuse me?" "Beautiful, complex, and a little intimidating," he said with a smile. "Also possibly dangerous if approached incorrectly." It was such a ridiculous comparison that Zara actually paused her work to stare at him. "That makes no sense." "Most good things don't," Daniel said cheerfully, sipping his terrible coffee. She should have told him to leave. Instead, she found herself asking, "Why are you here at 2 in the morning?" "Same as you, probably. Can't sleep, mine won't stop running, figured I might as well do something useful." He gestured at her screens. "What are you working on?" "Nothing you would understand," she said, then immediately regretted how harsh it sounded. She was supposed to be blending in, not insulting the locals, but Daniel just laughed. "Probably true. My grandmother always said I was smart enough to know how much I don't know." She was a wise woman. Despite herself, Zara was curious. "Was?" "She passed away last year. Raised me after my parents died when I was young." His voice was soft but not sad, like he'd made peace with the loss. She taught me that the universe is big enough for both logic and mystery, that we don't have to understand everything to appreciate it. Zara wanted to argue that understanding was the entire point, but something in his voice made her stay quiet. Over the next few weeks, Daniel became a constant presence. Not pushy, never demanding, just there. He would show up with coffee during her late shifts. He'd share his lunch when she forgot to eat, even though she didn't actually need Earth food. He asked her questions about where she was from, and she gave him carefully rehearsed lies about a distant country he'd never heard of. He told her stories about his grandmother, who made the best dumplings in the world. About how he tried learning violin as a kid, and was so bad the neighbors actually paid him to stop. About his theory that maybe consciousness wasn't just a brain thing but something fundamental to the universe itself, woven into the fabric of reality. That last one actually made her pause. For a human with limited understanding, it was surprisingly close to theories her own people had developed. "You think thoughts have mass?" she asked him one day over lunch. "Maybe not mass, but weight, impact. Like they're real things that exist even if we can't measure them properly yet." He leaned forward, excited. "What if love isn't just chemicals in the brain? What if it's a force we haven't found the equation for yet?" Zara had laughed at that. Actually laughed, a sound that came out of her before she could stop it. "That's the most unscientific thing I've ever heard." "Is it?" Daniel grinned. "We once thought gravity was magic. We thought atoms were impossible. Just because we can't measure something doesn't mean it's not real." She wanted to tell him he was wrong, that her people had proven definitively that love was nothing more than hormones and neural patterns, but she didn't. Because arguing with him was becoming something she looked forward to. Weeks turned into months. Zara found herself staying at the facility longer than necessary. She started taking lunch breaks at the same time Daniel did. She began to recognize his footsteps in the hallway, and would look up before he even entered the room. She told herself it was research. She was studying human bonding behavior up close. She documented everything in her logs with clinical precision. The way humans used humor to establish connection, how they shared food as a trust-building exercise, the function of eye contact in establishing social bonds. What she didn't document was the strange feeling in her chest when Daniel smiled at her, or the way her carefully ordered thoughts became messy and chaotic whenever he was nearby, or how she had started to miss him on days when their schedules didn't align. Those weren't data points. Those were problems. And Princess Zara was very, very good at solving problems. She just needed to apply logic and remove the variable causing the disruption. The variable was Daniel. The problem was, she didn't want him removed. 6 months into her Earth assignment, Zara realized she was in trouble. Real trouble. The kind that couldn't be solved with equations or logic. It started small. She began choosing her human disguise more carefully, wondering if Daniel would notice. She caught herself laughing at his jokes before remembering she wasn't supposed to find human humor entertaining. She started drinking the terrible vending machine coffee not because she needed it, but because it gave her an excuse to sit with him. One evening, Daniel found her staring at the night sky through the observatory window. Geneva's lights dulled the stars, but she could see them anyway. Her eyes were designed to detect wavelengths humans couldn't perceive. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Daniel said, coming to stand beside her. "It's adequate," Zara replied, then softer. "Yes, it is." "You ever wonder if someone out there is looking back at us?" he asked. She knew the answer. There were hundreds of civilizations looking at Earth right now, studying it, debating whether humans were ready for contact. Her own people had spy satellites monitoring everything from weather patterns to internet traffic. "Perhaps," she said carefully. "I hope so," Daniel continued. "I hope they're kind. I hope if they ever visit, they don't judge us too harshly for all our mess and chaos." He glanced at her with a soft smile. "I hope they understand that we're trying our best with what we know." Something twisted in Zara's chest. Guilt, she realized. A completely illogical emotion that served no productive purpose, and yet there it was, heavy and uncomfortable. "What if they think emotions are primitive?" she asked before she could stop herself. "What if they've evolved past all of this and see humanity as hopelessly backward?" Daniel was quiet for a moment. "Then I'd feel sorry for them." "Sorry for them? For being advanced? For missing out?" he said simply. "Yeah, emotions are messy and they hurt sometimes. But they're also what makes life worth living. A sunset is just light refraction without wonder, Music is just sound waves without joy. Achievement means nothing without pride. And connection. He trailed off, looking at her with an intensity that made her want to look away. Connection is what makes us more than just atoms arranged in a particular pattern. Zara had no response to that. According to everything she'd been taught, he was wrong. But standing there beside him, feeling the warmth radiating from his very human body, she couldn't quite believe it. Their friendship, if that's what it was, deepened over the following months. Daniel introduced her to things she'd never experienced. They watched old movies in his tiny apartment, and he explained why humans found them meaningful. They walked through the city at night, and he showed her places he loved. A bookshop that stayed open late, a bridge where you could see the whole city lit up, a cafe that made something called hot chocolate that was mostly sugar but somehow wonderful. He taught her about music, playing her everything from classical symphonies to modern pop songs. "Listen to this part," he'd say, rewinding to a specific moment. "You hear how the music swells there? That's exactly what hope feels like." Zara found herself listening not to analyze but to understand, to feel what he felt. She taught him things too without meaning to. Advanced mathematics that wouldn't be discovered on Earth for another century. She disguised it as theoretical work, watching his eyes light up as he followed her reasoning. "You're brilliant," he told her one night, after she'd solved a problem he'd been working on for months. "Like genuinely scary brilliant." "It's just logic," she deflected. "No, it's more than that. It's like you see patterns the rest of us can't." He leaned closer, studying her face. "Where are you really from, Zara? And don't say Eastern Europe. I've asked around. Nobody's heard of the region you described." Her heart, which didn't actually beat the same way human hearts did, seemed to skip. "Does it matter?" "No," Daniel said softly. "I don't care if you're from another country or another planet. I just want to know the real you." She should have lied better, should have reinforced her cover story. Instead, she said, "You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me. I'm a scientist. I believe in lots of impossible things, but Zara couldn't. Not yet. Maybe not ever." So she changed the subject and Daniel let her, because that's the kind of person he was. A year passed. Then 13 months. Zara's reports back to her homeworld became less frequent and less detailed. She told herself it was because she was gathering deeper data. But the truth was she didn't want to reduce Daniel and the others to clinical observations anymore. They weren't specimens. They were people, and Daniel was becoming dangerous to her carefully constructed worldview. It all came crashing down on a Thursday evening. They'd fallen into a routine of having dinner together after late shifts, something Zara had initially justified as efficient time management, but now simply looked forward to. They were sitting on the facility's roof, a spot Daniel had discovered where you could see the sunset without buildings blocking the view. The sky turned orange and pink and purple, colors she'd seen on 1,000 worlds but somehow looked different here. Different because Daniel was beside her, eating takeout noodles and pointing out cloud formations. "That one looks like a dragon," he said. "It looks like water vapor," Zara replied, but she was smiling. Daniel set down his food and turned to face her fully. He looked nervous, which was unusual for him. He started to speak, stopped, started again. "Zara, I need to tell you something, and you don't have to say anything back, okay? I just need to say it." Her advanced mind, capable of processing millions of calculations per second, suddenly went completely blank. "I'm in love with you," Daniel said, the words tumbling out. "I know that's probably a terrible thing to spring on you, and maybe you don't feel the same way, and that's okay. But I've spent the last year getting to know you, and you're the most amazing person I've ever met. You're brilliant and strange and funny, and you pretend you don't care about things, but you do. You care so much, and I can't keep pretending I don't feel this way." He took a breath, and Zara watched his hands shake slightly as he continued. "I don't have a ring or some fancy plan. I'm just a guy who fell in love with someone extraordinary. So I'm asking, even though it's crazy and rushed and probably stupid, Zara, would you marry me? Would you consider building a life with me?" The world seemed to stop. The sunset froze mid-descent. The wind held its breath. Zara felt something crack inside her chest, not physical but deeper. All her training, all her certainty about emotions being irrelevant, all of it shattered in that moment. Because she knew with terrifying clarity exactly what she felt. She loved him back, and that was impossible. Zara stood up so fast she nearly knocked over the takeout containers. Her mind was racing, millions of thoughts colliding at once, none of them making sense. "I can't," she whispered. "Daniel, I can't. You don't understand what you're asking." She saw the hope drain from his face, replaced by hurt that he tried to hide. "Okay, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have—" "No, you don't understand." She was backing away toward the roof access door. "I'm not who you think I am. This can't work. It's impossible." Before he could respond, before she could see the full weight of his pain, Zara ran. She left him there on the roof with the sunset and unanswered questions. And she ran like her life depended on it. She locked herself in her private lab, the one area she'd secured with technology humans couldn't access. Her hands were shaking as she deactivated her holographic disguise. The human appearance melted away, revealing her true form. Bioluminescent patterns rippled across her skin, responding to her emotional state in ways they hadn't since she was a child. Her eyes reflected starlight from galaxies light years away. She looked like what she was. An alien, not human, not even close. "What have I done?" she asked the empty room. For the first time in her existence, Zara couldn't calculate her way out of a problem. Every solution led to pain. If she told Daniel the truth, she'd have to reveal that their entire relationship was built on lies. If she accepted his proposal, she'd be binding him to someone who would outlive him by millennia. If she left without explanation, she'd hurt him, but at least he'd be free to find someone human, someone who could give him a normal life. Every option was wrong. She tried to work, burying herself in calculations and research, but the numbers blurred together. Her mind kept replaying the moment on the roof, the vulnerability in Daniel's eyes, the hope in his voice when he said he loved her. Her people had been so sure they were right. Love was a chemical reaction, nothing more. Oxytocin and dopamine creating an illusion of connection. They'd evolved past it, built a civilization on pure logic and reason, and they'd thrived. No wars over jealousy, no families torn apart by heartbreak, just clean, efficient progress. But if that was true, why did her chest hurt like something vital had been ripped away? Why couldn't she stop thinking about Daniel's smile, his terrible jokes, the way he said her name? Why did the thought of never seeing him again feel worse than any physical pain she'd ever experienced? "This is not real," she told herself firmly. "It's just neural patterns mimicking human emotional responses. Contamination from prolonged exposure." Even as she said it, she knew it was a lie. Days passed. Zara avoided Daniel completely, switching to night shifts when he worked days, taking different routes through the facility, eating lunch in her sealed lab. She threw herself into her research with desperate intensity, as if enough work could erase what she was feeling. It didn't work. She caught glimpses of him sometimes, usually by accident. He looked tired, sad in a way that made her want to go to him and explain everything. But what could she say? That she was a princess from a civilization in another galaxy? That she'd been studying humans like laboratory specimens? That she'd accidentally developed the very thing her people considered a disease? On the 5th day of her avoidance, her communication device activated. The holographic display showed the seal of the High Council. Her stomach dropped. The High Elder's ancient face materialized in the projection, expression grave. "Princess Zara, we have reviewed your recent reports, or rather your lack thereof. I apologize, Elder. I've been focused on gathering more comprehensive data. We have been monitoring your biosigns remotely," the Elder continued, ignoring her excuse. "Your neural patterns show significant emotional disruption. Your hormone levels are erratic. You are exhibiting every sign of what humans call emotional attachment." Zara wanted to deny it, but knew her people's technology was too advanced to fool. "It's a temporary anomaly. I can correct it." "No." The Elder's voice was firm. "You are compromised. Your research is contaminated and therefore worthless. We are recalling you immediately. You will return to the homeworld within 72 hours for emotional recalibration." 72 hours? Zara's voice came out smaller than she intended. "Your transport is already en route. Prepare for departure. This assignment is terminated." The Elder's expression softened slightly, which for her species meant the faintest shift in eye luminescence. "You are not the first researcher to be affected by emotional species. It is unfortunate but not unexpected. The recalibration process will restore you to proper function. And if I refuse recalibration?" The silence that followed was answer enough. Refusing would mean exile from her homeworld, from her family, from everything she'd ever known. She would be classified as mentally unstable, a cautionary tale about the dangers of studying primitive species too closely. The connection ended. Zara stared at the empty space where the hologram had been, her mind reeling. 72 hours. 3 days to leave Earth forever. 3 days to abandon Daniel without explanation, to vanish from his life like she'd never existed. The logical part of her brain said this was ideal. Clean break, no messy goodbyes, return to her ordered existence. But another part, a part that was growing stronger despite her attempts to suppress it, was screaming that this was wrong. That night, Zara walked through Geneva alone. She didn't know why she'd left the facility, didn't have a destination. Her feet carried her past the places Daniel had shown her. The bookshop where he'd bought her a copy of a poetry collection, insisting she'd understand humans better through their art. The bridge where they'd watched meteor showers that he could barely see, but she could map in perfect detail. The cafe where he'd introduced her to hot chocolate and laughed at her initial confusion about consuming liquid candy. Every location held a memory. Every memory hurt. She found herself outside Daniel's apartment building. The lights in his window were on. She could see his silhouette moving around, probably working on equations because that's what he did when he was upset. She'd learned that about him, the way he processed pain through physics. She should leave, should let him think she'd rejected him for normal reasons, not because she was an alien princess who'd been spying on his species. He'd hurt for a while, then move on. Find a nice human woman who could give him everything he deserved. But Zara couldn't make herself walk away. She thought about what Daniel had said on the roof, about emotions being what made life worth living, about connection being what made them more than just atoms. Her people would say he was wrong, that he was justifying a biological flaw. But her people had never felt what she was feeling now. They'd engineered away their capacity for this kind of pain, yes, but also for this kind of joy. They'd created a perfect civilization. But had they created a meaningful one? For the first time in her life, Zara questioned everything she'd been taught. She looked up at Daniel's window and made a decision that would change everything. She was going to tell him the truth. Zara stood outside Daniel's building for 20 minutes arguing with herself. This was illogical, dangerous, selfish even. She was about to unload an impossible truth on someone who'd done nothing wrong except fall in love with her. But he deserved to know. He deserved an explanation that was real, not some convenient lie that would let her disappear quietly. She climbed the stairs to his third-floor apartment, each step feeling heavier than the last. Her hand hesitated at his door. Behind it, she could hear soft music playing, something classical and melancholy. She knocked before she could lose her nerve. The door opened. Daniel stood there in an old sweatshirt and pajama pants, hair messy, eyes tired. When he saw her, surprise and hope and hurt all crossed his face at once. "Zara, I didn't expect— I need to tell you something," she said quickly. "Can I come in?" He stepped aside wordlessly, closing the door behind her. His apartment was small but comfortable, filled with books and papers and photographs of people she assumed were his family. It was messy in a lived-in way that her sterile lab could never be. "Do you want tea or—" "I'm not human," Zara blurted out. Daniel blinked. "What? I'm not human. I'm not from Eastern Europe or any place on this planet. I'm from a civilization called the Luminary, from a galaxy you call Andromeda. I was sent here to study your species. Everything about me, my appearance, my background, all of it was a lie." She expected disbelief, laughter, anger. Instead, Daniel just looked at her steadily and said, Okay. That's all you have to say?" He moved to his couch and sat down, gesturing for her to join him. "I told you before, I've known for months that you weren't entirely what you seemed. I just thought maybe you were in witness protection or working for some secret government agency. Alien Princess wasn't my first guess, but honestly, it explains a lot." Zara sat, keeping distance between them. "You're taking this remarkably well. I'm a scientist, Zara, or whatever your real name is. I'd be a pretty bad one if I denied evidence just because it challenged my worldview." He leaned forward. "Is Zara your real name?" "Yes." "Princess Zara of the Luminary Empire." Saying it out loud felt strange after months of pretending. Princess. Wow. Okay. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "So when I proposed to you, I was asking royalty from another galaxy to marry me. That's either the most romantic or most presumptuous thing I've ever done." Despite everything, Zara almost smiled. That's your reaction? Not fear or anger that I've been lying to you for over a year. Should I be angry? He asked genuinely. You were doing your job, and I'm guessing there were good reasons you couldn't tell me before. His expression grew more serious. Is that why you said you couldn't marry me? Because I'm human and you're not? It's more complicated than that. Zara took a breath. My people evolved past emotions thousands of years ago. We see them as primitive, inefficient. I was raised to believe that love is just chemistry, a biological trick that serves no purpose for an advanced civilization. Coming here was supposed to be research, documenting how emotional species function before they outgrow such things. Let me guess, Daniel said quietly. You weren't supposed to catch feelings yourself. I wasn't supposed to be capable of it. She met his eyes. My people were wrong, or I'm broken. I don't know which is worse. You're not broken. His voice was firm. You're just learning that maybe your people don't know everything. They know enough to recall me, Zara said bitterly. I have less than 3 days before my transport arrives. The High Council detected my emotional compromise and ordered me home for recalibration. They're going to remove whatever is making me feel this way, restore me to proper function. That sounds like brainwashing. They call it correction. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. And if you don't go back? Exile. I'd be cut off from my people, my family, everything I've ever known. I'd be classified as mentally unstable. She looked down at her hands. Even if I stayed, Daniel, I lived for thousands of your years. You'd grow old and die while I barely age at all. I'd watch you fade away over decades, and then I'd have centuries of life left to remember what I lost. How is that fair to either of us? Life isn't fair, Daniel said. That's kind of the point. We don't get to choose the circumstances, just what we do with them. He shifted closer, not touching but near. Can I ask you something? Not as a scientist, just as me. Of course. Do you love me? The question hung in the air between them. Zara had spent her whole life dealing with complex equations, paradoxes that would break human minds, questions about the nature of reality itself. But this simple question, 3 small words, was the hardest thing anyone had ever asked her. I don't know, she whispered. I don't know what love is supposed to feel like. My people removed it before I was born. I have no reference point, no data to compare against. Forget data, Daniel said gently. What do you feel? I feel, Zara struggled for words. When I'm around you, my thoughts become chaotic. My carefully ordered mind turns into a mess. I find myself doing illogical things like drinking coffee I don't need just to have an excuse to sit with you. I think about you when you're not there. I miss you, which makes no sense because I've existed for centuries without knowing you and never missed anyone. She took a shaky breath. When you proposed to me on that roof, I felt terror. Not of you, but of how much I wanted to say yes. And these last 5 days avoiding you, it's been like missing a piece of myself. So I don't know if that's love, Daniel, but it's something my people said was impossible. That's love, Daniel said softly. Or at least that's how it starts. It's messy and illogical, and it makes you do things that don't make sense. But it's real. I know because I feel the same way. But the lifespan issue, you think I haven't thought about that? He smiled sadly. Zara, I'm human. I'm going to die someday whether you're in my life or not. The question isn't how long we have. It's whether we make the time count. That's a very human perspective. Maybe humans got something right that your advanced civilization missed. He finally reached out, taking her hand carefully like she might vanish. I'm not asking you to give up your people or your world. I'm not asking you to choose between your home and me. I'm just asking if you want to try. Just try and see what happens. Zara looked at their joined hands. His skin was warm, fragile, temporary. He'd be gone in what felt like an eye blink to her. But right now in this moment he was here, real and present, and offering her something her people claimed didn't exist. I'm leaving in 3 days, she said. The transport is already coming. Then we have 3 days. That's not enough time. No, Daniel agreed. But it's what we have. So let's not waste it arguing about what we can't control. Zara didn't leave Daniel's apartment that night. They stayed up talking until the sun rose, and she told him everything. About her world, her people, the technology that made humans look like they were still playing with fire and sticks. She showed him her true form, letting the holographic disguise drop completely. The patterns on her skin shifted and glowed, responding to her emotions in ways she couldn't control anymore. Her eyes reflected distant starlight. She was clearly, undeniably not human. Daniel stared at her for a long moment, then said, "You're beautiful. I'm other. You're both." He reached out tentatively, touching the luminescent patterns on her arm. "Does it hurt? The disguise?" "No, it's just light manipulation." She watched his face, seeing wonder instead of fear. "You're really okay with this?" "Zara, I fell in love with who you are, not what you look like. Though for the record, this is amazing. Do the patterns change based on emotion?" "Yes, my people considered it primitive, lost control. We normally suppress it. So right now, what do they mean?" He gestured at the swirling colors. She looked down at herself. The patterns were chaotic, mixing colors that shouldn't go together. Confusion, fear, but also, she hesitated. Hope. Apparently hope is gold. They spent the next 2 days together. Zara knew she should be preparing for her departure, packing up her research, tying up loose ends. Instead, she chose to spend every moment with Daniel. He took her to places she'd never bothered visiting before. A children's museum where kids played and learned and laughed for no productive reason. A park where people walked dogs and fed ducks and sat on benches doing nothing but existing. A small concert where a local band played music that was technically imperfect, but somehow moving. "This is what you're giving up if you go back," Daniel said as they watched the sun set from a hilltop outside the city. "Not the places or the things, but the ability to experience them, to feel them matter. My people would say that's exactly the problem. Feelings are distractions. From what? From the pursuit of knowledge?" He turned to face her. "What's the point of understanding the universe if you can't appreciate it?" Zara had no answer for that. On the third day, her final day, she took Daniel to CERN after hours. She showed him things humans wouldn't discover for centuries. Technology hidden in her lab that could revolutionize everything. She explained concepts that would break physics as he knew it. "I could give you all of this," she said. "My people would never know. I could advance human science by 1,000 years before I leave." "Don't," Daniel said firmly. "Why not?" "It could help so many people. Because humanity needs to make its own mistakes, learn its own lessons. If you give us all the answers, we'll never develop the wisdom to use them properly." He took her hands. "Besides, that's not why you brought me here. You're stalling." He was right. She was stalling because in a few hours the transport would arrive. She'd have to make a choice she still wasn't ready to make. "Come with me," she said suddenly. Daniel blinked. "What?" "Come with me. To my world. You could see things no human has ever seen. Technology, knowledge, wonders you can't imagine. We have medicine that could extend your life, slow your aging. We could have more time." "Zara," he said her name gently. "You know that's not a real solution. I'd be leaving everything and everyone I know. My work, my life, my world, and I'd still be human in a place that sees emotions as a disease. We'd be two outsiders together, but still outsiders. At least we'd be together. Would we? Or would you resent me eventually for making you exile yourself? Would I resent you for taking me from my home?" He cupped her face with his hands. "I can't be the reason you leave your people. That choice has to be yours." The transport arrived at midnight, a shimmer in the sky invisible to human instruments. Zara felt it through her neural link, a silent summons. She stood on the roof of CERN with Daniel, the place where he'd first told her he loved her. Coming full circle. "I don't know what to do," she admitted. "Every logical calculation says I should go back. Return to my people, accept recalibration, forget this ever happened. The probability of us working long-term is statistically negligible. You'll be gone in decades. I'll have thousands of years left. It's completely impractical." "Why?"